Yo, it's Elut. Welcome back to the Fire Emblem Mount Rushmore series. Today we're doing the third objective list, and with me, as always, is Mithril Zenith. Mithril, say hi. Welcome back.
Hello everyone, it's been a little while since I've done anything on my channel, let alone on yours, but here we are.
Hey, I'm excited. Before we get into the lists for these categories, though, I have a couple things to take care of. So the first thing is congratulations to Boyd for officially making it on the Axbro Mount Rushmore. We did a poll like a day or two after I put out that video, and Boyd won by quite a bit, actually. So, you know, no disrespect to the Ross fans. I know the Ross fans are upset, but Boyd did get over 2/3 majority, so congrats to him. And it's been a little bit of time since we did my personal video for these. And I've been doing some thinking, some living, some contemplating. And there's two people I want to change on my lists before we get into the objective stuff. So the first one, I mentioned in the first video, but I want to make it official. Because I kind of beat myself up for it later that day. I think, for me personally, Yuri goes up here over Volk. The thing with Volk is, like, I really think about what he brings to FE9 utility-wise, and it's really not that much. Like, yeah, he'll get a couple okay chests for you, but even in, like, the Ike solo run playthrough, like, you have enough chest keys to get the actual really important items, and I find that stealing in FE9 really just doesn't come up. So the only thing I really like about Volk that much is, like, his place in the story, his role with, like, Ike after chapter 18 or 19 or whatever chapter that is. No spoilers or whatever if you haven't played it yet. But that's cool and all, but Yuri as a gameplay unit is so much more interesting to me. And Yuri makes me want to replay one of my least favorite Fire Emblem games. So that's, like, kind of a big deal. Wow, I know, the Three Houses.
Much, huh?
Yeah, I just think he's so cool. And part of it is, like, the foul play, part of it is, like, his character and supports and stuff, and part of it, a little bit, I can't lie, is just that he's on, like, my A team in Fire Emblem Heroes, and it's mostly for foul play, but he's, like, a good combat unit too. Just, I don't know. I think I actually like his character and everything that he does combined more than Volk. So that's my first switch up. And then the second one is a much more recent one. I said in the other video, I'm like, I'm not really much of a Deke fan. Why would you give a hero crest to Deke when you could give it to Rutger? And I still think that's true, but in this last playthrough of FE6 that I've been doing on stream, I made the effort. I'm like, I'm gonna promote Deke first and just not even use Rutger, and we'll see what happens. And I have to say, I am beyond impressed. Like, I actually get it now. Deke has been so incredibly solid for, like, the whole time I've been using him since he got promoted. Like, most of the maps that I would play would be Deke on one side of the map, just killing things by himself. And then the other half of the map is, like, the rest of the team. Just, like, kind of, like, doing their own thing, working together. So I'm all of a sudden, like, a really big Deke fan. It's crazy. I do still think, like, objectively you should give the hero crest to Rutger. It just makes more sense overall. But I've really been appreciating him a lot. Like, until Melody showed up, he was by far my best unit, like, after promotion. So big fan of him. And I'm personally taking Garrick down. I like Garrick fine. And you never know, when we go through the list today, he might just come back up for one reason or another, and that's okay. But yeah, that's all I had. I had to switch those out, so.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, I guess let's get to it and work down the list. Unless you want to... Any other change-ups before we begin?
No, I think I'm all good. I'll just roll with whatever you're thinking.
Fair enough. Okay, so top of the list of bows, we have Astrid, Sin or Shin, I guess it depends on what translation you're running.
Yeah.
Rolf and Shannon.
I know Rolf is coming down.
Much as I love Rolf, much as, a fun unit / meme he is, I don't think we can justify his presence here, and I'm hesitant on Shannon. This is FE10 Shannon specifically, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because for the chapters he's around in, he's pretty solid. Just like massive stats and everything. Like surprising to me just how good he is.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like for the chapters he's in, you less need an archer than you do, and it's like there are some people who would put Leonardo up above. I'm not necessarily sure I'm one of them, but people argue that Leonardo is more important because of the stuff that he can do against like Lagoos without counters and stuff like that, or against flying Lagoos in like the late Act 3. He has some purpose, he has some merit to him. Let's just say I'm hesitant on Shinon, but I'll be willing to leave him up here for now unless we can come up with something better.
Fair.
So people are first obviously going to say Gordon. They're going to be like, hey, why isn't Gordon up here? And that's like, because Gordon is... What's Gordon's like most notable characteristic to you? Because
5
for
points!
me...
Probably that.
Yeah, for exactly. For it's memes. But for me, it's having 8 strength at level 20 archer. I don't know how many... No, it's that, but more importantly, it's getting so many blank level ups as I'm trying to arena grind him, to the point where the arena enemies get stronger than him and he dies.
Yeah. Which is even funnier compounded with like that really old bad advice of like, oh, just train Gordon on the chapter 1 boss in hard 5. It's like, why? What do you get out of that? Bad unit?
He gets more defense than strength, and both those growths are low. Yeah, so it's like FE1. FE1 gives you a lot of archers, and they're all varying degrees of usefulness. I don't know if we're counting like Wolf as an archer here. I think Wolf's more of a special case.
Yeah, I would say so too.
He's more renowned, at least in Shadow Dragon, as a general than an archer.
Yeah,
a horseman.
For sure, for sure.
But it's... I don't necessarily know if I would put anyone in FE1. Do we mention FE2 archers than either Leon or Python?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think that at least one of them needs to go up here just for what they brought to archers with the massive range, and especially in Valentia with the advent of the killer bow and hunter's volley.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, I mentioned in the other video I'm a big Python fan too. But I'd honestly be okay if they both made it up here. I wouldn't really argue that too hard. Just the range, counterattacking at 1 range as well is just crazy. Like, that's just never a bad thing. And there are so many, like, useful scenarios where, like, attacking from 5 range is, like, super helpful against, like, dark mages and things like that do a lot of damage when no one has res, so...
The caveat, and it's only a partial caveat to them, is that during their archer phase and somewhat into their sniper phase, they will miss, it feels like, more often than they hit.
Yeah,
That's more of a case of Gaiden terrain, though, than of anything about them specifically.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because they don't have magic, so they can't bypass terrain, and they don't have overkill skill like mercenaries, so they can't, reliably hit through terrain. And bows aren't the most accurate weapons. Swords are far more accurate, and so they have a number of issues going for them in regards to accuracy, but if you can get them to Bow Knight, they are unstoppable.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So at least one of them, in my mind, should make it up here. You can kind of pick which one you're more of a fan of. I personally am a fan of neither of them, and making Atlas and one of my other villagers archers.
Atlas?
Using them instead, but...
Oh, okay.
I do the Atlas into archer, give him a killer bow, and then the killer bow has high natural hit. Hunter's volley makes him double, and then that really capitalizes on his overkill power growth.
Yeah.
Because that's his only good stat.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm a big fan of Atlas too, but I always just made him like a mercenary and dread fighter and all that. I don't know why exactly.
The good old 5 dread fighters build.
Yeah, why not? I see no downside. But yeah, no, I mean, personally, I'm more of a fan of Python. I just think he's funny, and he's like one of the few people in Alm's crew that like keeps me sane because so many of them I actually don't like. Whereas Leon is a character, a unit that I enjoy in a group of generally characters that I also enjoy. Like, I like most of Celica's crew, like in gameplay and everything. So he's just like, it's sort of like the Radiant Dawn thing where it's like Jill is a good unit in an army of scrubs and me is a good unit in an army of good units. It's like that kind of similar thing.
Yeah.
I could see both.
Much.
Do we take Gordon down? We
as for
had to mention him.
Yeah. I'm not including Gordon on this.
Okay.
It's like I mentioned Gordon of like we have to mention him, but yeah, it's like we could put Gordon up if you want him to be the example of this is what a lot of Fire Emblem archers are. They're bad.
I guess that's true.
But we have some archer arguments to get into, not the one you're thinking of. And also not the other one you're thinking of. The original archers that start debates on who you use more, who's better. Jamka and Midir.
Oh, okay.
Because you have... Jamka especially pioneers kind of it's termed sometimes the machine gun build. The Adept, Accost, Pursuit with critical with the killer bow.
Yeah.
And just the ability to fire up to 8 times and crit is pretty good. Or you have Midir who can do half of that but on a horse, but also with worse stats in every way.
Yeah. He's called Midir for a reason.
So it's like, okay, you have Jamka who flies through the arena. He's basically a sword master with 2 range, or Midir, who's basically another scrub on a horse, but he can actually get to the combat even if he can't survive 2 hits.
Yeah.
So, and don't think that I'm not talking down Midir. I'm trying to train him in my genealogy run right now. He died, and I'm gonna have to use the Valkyrie staff to resurrect him so I can get the Brave Bow to pass down to Lester. That's where I'm at with Midir.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going for the Ideen pairing.
I already did. It's the only one that's locked in so far.
Oh, okay. It's already
and then he
died.
Oh, it's so stupid. Anyways, so for some reason, and I credit this to Fire Emblem fans being the way they are, archers, especially when you have a game with 2 archers you get relatively early on, we have a problem when it comes to arguing about which one is better, even if the answer is either take both of them or take neither of them because of the way the game is.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because you have, technically with FE3, you have Ryan and Gordon, though no one really cares about them. Technically with FE1, you have Gordon and Castor, but again, no one really cares about them.
Yeah.
FE4, you have Jamka and Midir. FE5... I don't actually remember any archer.
I mean, there's just
arguments.
Well, arguments there are none.
Or it's Selfina is the only one you. Maybe you use. Wow, why am I spacing on his name?
I mean, people like Ronan because he's funny.
Ronan.
But
yeah, people like Ronan because of mecha memes. People like Tanya. It's usually you have the usually cute female archer or the usually generic male archer is what Thracia started with that, with Tanya and Ronan, and the answer is neither of them are good.
Correct.
FE6, you flip it a little bit, you have Walt and Dorothy, but then you also have Sue and Shin who are mounted but put you on a path to Sakai, which a lot of people don't like. FE7, the real argument is... So FE6, the argument is Ilya or Sakai. FE7, the argument is Will or Rebecca, and the answer is 1, did you play Lin mode, and 2, probably neither of them anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly.
FE8, you only have 1, and that's Naomi.
Ooh.
And then it's Rolf and they've trimmed down for there until you finally hit engage, and it's like, okay,
oh god,
do we dig that up again? Do we even mention their names?
I'm not gonna mention their names if you're not gonna mention their names.
I mean, it was not the last straw, but it was like the last video that I made where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not gonna talk about engage units anymore. I'm over it.
No, you were so done, and like I generally don't like read a lot of that kind of stuff. Like full transparency,
same.
like I don't read like Serena's Forest like forums and shit like that. Like I really don't care most of the time. But like I felt like I couldn't escape some of the Allcrest Etier stuff. And I was like, dude, who cares, man? Like everyone in Engage is so easy to use.
It was the biggest thread on the Fire Emblem Reddit outside of maybe the general questions thread before they closed it.
Really?
If I remember right, it was like 12,000 posts.
Oh my god.
I didn't see it myself. I didn't go there, but I saw like OifiBot's description said it was like 12,000 posts. Anyway, whoa. I mentioned this because Jamka vs. Midir is like an age-old discussion for anyone who plays FE4. And again, it's like, do we, for some reason, that's a quality of archers that's stuck around, is if there's two of them, people will argue nonstop about which one's better.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. That's very interesting.
I don't think either of them necessarily deserves a spot, but it was like something that I wanted to talk about because it's a weird trait. The archer that I do want to mention that I think is at least potentially worth a spot is Takumi.
Oh yeah, okay, I can see that.
Pioneering, at least in his enemy phase version and in Heroes, Point Blank. I know that existed for archers, you know, from Gaiden, but as a skill, kind of notable. Fujinumi, solid, just, and he's one of those archers that he's not a pre-sniper, he's just an archer that no one really said was bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say he's overrated, but no one said he was bad. A lot of people kind of agreed he's at the very least pretty good and does his job perfectly well by just one-shotting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he can't compete with Ryoma, but like after that, he's exactly who can. But after that, he's like easily, in my opinion, like the best Birthright Royal. You know what I mean? Like Hinoka is garbage. And Sakura's just like kind of heal support, I guess. But Takumi, I think, has like pretty good unit feel for what he does, despite being in an awful game. Birthright, as it were. But
yeah,
I could see that. I could see him being up here.
So here are all the archers, I guess, that we're even thinking about. Who do you feel like trimming from this list? Because we've talked about Astrid, where it's like, okay, you have fun Paragon horse archer with, you know, eventually becomes a paladin in a game full of paladins that picks up another weapon and sometimes uses a bow still.
Yeah.
Because the other weapon starts at like, what, E rank? D rank?
Well, yeah, it should be D rank, I think, in FE9, which is actually doesn't matter for axes, because I think steel axes in FE9 are still E rank, which is weird.
Yeah, I love steel axe E rank. It's just one of my favorite random decisions that's stuck around.
Yeah, it's so funny.
So long.
But yeah, no, I like Astrid for that reason. Like the Paragon is just fun, and applying to bonus XP is also very fun. But does that make her an iconic bow user in the grand scheme of things? No, I'm not stupid.
Yeah. I think we should probably only have one of Python or Leon. And my... it's hard to say what my personal choice is on that. Anyway, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think Shin stays just, like, regardless.
Yeah. Best Nomads... Like, even Sue's pretty good, but, like, made Nomad iconic for good reasons.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Like, to the point, like, people love Wrath, but Wrath is, like, not really around very much. And has the weird distinction of losing con between Lin mode and Eliwood mode. Yeah. As well as being weaker if you play Lin mode, because he starts at, like, 3 levels lower and has nowhere near the time to get experience.
Yeah. Well, and just like the transition from 6 to 7 is like that class, those weapon types are so much less valuable.
Oh yeah, not half, but double effectiveness instead of triple. Just kind of lower might in general and weaker enemies in general.
Yeah. And just like no 1 to 2 range option is 1 or 2 range. Whereas like in FE6, it's like I'd rather you do one thing well at any given moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, also, FE6 has way more chapters that flood wyverns.
Yeah. Yeah, they are beefy too. So triple effective damage goes hard. Absolutely.
Yeah, FE7 has one wyvern flood chapter, and you don't even have to fight most of them.
Yeah. Oh, FE7. What a game.
It certainly is one.
It's certainly a game. And then Shine Shinon, whatever. I will say, I low-key maybe am one of the people that you mentioned earlier that like kind of think Leo is more important. Because like ledge control in part 1 is more important for you, the player, than it is ever really in part 3 Grail Mercenaries. So like the niche that like a bow could have in that scenario is like not important. But to me, it's just, I find his character pretty interesting despite being a huge idiot jerk, you know?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to like put people up on this just for their characters, because it's like, yeah, but what does that character have to do with you being an archer, you know? It's which is sad, because I think Shinon is a very interesting character. I mean, before people jump down my throat, I'm not a racist and I don't support racism, but I think it's handled very interestingly, being like, hey, here's a person who's on your side in this war for whatever reasons, but they still have these different kind of concepts and ideologies, and I think people are way too purist and absolutist with their mentality when talking about Shinon and whatnot, but it's just... But the fact that it does spark those conversations means that it's at least handled in an interesting way.
Yeah, no, I think he's such an interesting character to talk about and to, you know, watch. And then the other thing, like you said, is just the raw stats are fun. And for me, the end game double bow is just really fun as well. Do I think he should stay up here? Not necessarily. Okay, so I think Shin stays. I could see Takumi staying.
And then I think we could... I guess here's the thing. Python or Leon? I think both have merit. In some ways, Leon's more important because desert chapters and dealing with all of that, being one of the few units that can actually fight in those chapters. But in other ways, I think Python's more important because you don't have a glut of mages, you don't have a ton of flyers, and he's and you have more maps that have rude like walls and whatnot in them, where it really helps to be able to fire over them. Like for instance, the map which has like just 4 channels, like surrounded by walls, near the end of chapter 4, I want to say.
Oh yeah, and there's like a bow knight and a dark mage like in each little corridor.
Yeah, a bow knight, a dark mage, and a baron, or something in each of them.
Yeah.
I think that maybe for those reasons, plus if we're talking character and whatnot, I think that, in my opinion, Python stays over Leon personally.
Fine, twist my arm. Yeah, no, that's fine with me. I like Python a lot, so that's cool. Yeah,
just being a deadpan in an army full of like idealists really kind of does. He's very much a grounding force in a story that really needs a grounding force.
Yeah, no, I appreciate him a lot. Again, no diss to Leon. I think Leon's cool too, but Python's my man.
And I don't know if we should probably include either of the FE4 bros, but I just wanted to talk about him because I think it's interesting. I think we can leave Shinon up here then, just because some reference to, unless you want to swap him out for Leonardo. I have to say Leonardo. I can't say Leo. Yeah. Leo's a different unit.
Yeah. No, there's a couple Leonardos.
Let's just put the Ninja Turtle up there.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, I don't know. This is like an interesting topic you brought up with FE4, but I don't know that individually either one of them is like so iconic. I don't personally like enjoy using either of them all that much.
Yeah. Iconic Madeir moment is him getting crit by an enemy that doesn't have a crit skill.
Yeah. Right in the prologue. Talk about a bad first impression.
Indeed.
I don't think there's anybody else that like I'm forgetting that I need to mention.
Yeah, it's like we could talk about, like, if you wanted to, one of the pre-promoted snipers of either FE6, maybe George or maybe Bridget or something, but I don't think either of them are really super notable enough. It's like George is a pretty solid filler when you need, like, when you just need an extra archer to fight wyverns, but that's about it.
I feel weird leaving Shining up here just because it's like I really like him and I don't want it to be too biased, but I don't know. I can't think of like a better one.
I like him too. Let's lean into bias.
Yeah, all right. I'm down.
Yeah, in all likelihood, I think Leonardo might deserve to be up here more, but we can leave Shannon up here and people can just swap him out mentally. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. You want to go to the thieves?
Yeah. Let's talk about some thieves for a bit.
Alrighty.
So, Lithus definitely, at the very least, some Thracia representation. Best thieves, most important thieves in the series, whether or not they're the best.
Yeah.
Most thiefly duties performed. Soth FE10 is weird because he's not up here because he's a thief. He's up here because he's a Jagan.
Yeah, I know. But even
Astor is FE6 has so much necessity for thieves across several things to steal, a ton of chests to grab, more than you can realistically have chest keys for unless you're like really planning out your run.
Yeah, but even then, like sometimes money's really tight when you're setting it aside for like killer weapons and things like that.
Yeah.
So that alone is also nice. I felt he was not only the best rep from FE6, but I thought the best rep from like GBA in general, simply because I feel like FE6 you need like those stealables more. There are more of them, but also just that there isn't like a stat requirement to steal. You simply have to be a thief. It doesn't matter what your speed or your strength or build is in order to steal something. So it's like a little bit of raw power, I guess, but they just do the most, I think. And even in that sphere, in FE6, I think Astolfo or Astor, whatever translation you're using, I think he's just the most important one.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm thinking through other thieves, and I'm like, okay, FE4 thieves are weird because it's all money management.
Yeah.
FE1 and 3, you have Marth with the Fire Emblem who can open chests, and those games are designed so that. Yeah. Honestly, though, that's Fire Emblem. Give him a master key. FE1 and maybe FE3, master key is just the lockpick. FE1 it is, but so it's like Julian and Rickard aren't super important there on that. It's hard to really say that they're super necessary. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other thieves. It's like I use Colm all the time. That's just because I'm a sucker for that Colm Nami support.
Oh yeah, I know. I think I've heard you talk about that before too.
Yeah, in my latest video I talked a little bit about that. The other games you mentioned, Volk moving him down because it's fun to steal everything that isn't bolted down, but ultimately that just means you're getting a bunch of heal and physics staves.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's mostly from like chapter 22. Like that's pretty much it.
Other than that, though, yeah, there's not really a ton of like notable thieves unless we start including ninjas into the mix, and I think that's a bit of a stretch.
I could,
because once again, they're not doing really thiefy stuff as much as they're doing, 1-2 range, high speed stuff.
Right, but I think it's worth mentioning because like this category is like a little bit broad. Like it is thieves, assassins, rogues, etc. So if you felt a specific one was notable to talk about, like, I'm definitely down to talk about it.
Because, like, if we're including thieves, and I guess maybe this is one that we should talk about potentially for archers too, is Niles.
Okay.
Because, like, where do you categorize Niles? Is he a thief? Is he an archer? He's kind of both. He's really important capture utility. I played my first run of Conquest. I didn't really capture anyone, and it was a miserable time.
Yeah.
So I think that in terms of capture utility, it's super important. In terms of archery utility, maybe. I mean, he's good anti-ninja, but that's because the weapon triangle is that way. As far as thief goes, I'm trying to think. There's not really too many important chests to get, but lock touch is nice and is important to getting them because there's not really keys, if I remember right. Or are there keys? I think there are keys. There are chest keys, but you can't take them from the chapter you get them in. Is that how it works in Fates?
I know it's something weird. I'm not the best person to ask, but I feel like I've heard that somewhere, like, you can't keep it after the chapter if you don't use it. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That sounds vaguely familiar to me. So, it's like, I want to mention Niles somewhere because he's one of the units that I think is the most important in a run of Conquest, at least on higher difficulties, like on Lunatic. Just because of capture utility alone. But even then, it's like, do we count him as an archer? Do we count him as a thief? Is he just his own thing? It doesn't really deserve to be in these categories.
Do we just make a Niles category?
Apparently.
No, I think that's interesting, because everyone was bugging me when I got to Chapter 9. It's like, oh, you gotta... Chapter 9 of Conquest, you gotta capture the boss. I'm like, what? Like, what's so great about this boss? And then I looked at him, he's got, like, seal defense and, like, 2 or 3 other skills. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know capture was a thing. I didn't read the skill yet.
Yeah, I mean, that boss has his uses in Chapter 10 as just kind of, like, better unit. Like, ultimately what capture is that it allows you to get units that are filler units, but are better than the rest of your army, at least at the time.
Okay.
Is the way that I would define how, like, capturing works. Because it's not that these units are necessarily your forever units, but there's some interesting skill builds you can get, there's some interesting, like, classes you can get that are hard to get outside of capture, and there are some units that just have particular matchups with the maps that you face that they slot in pretty well, so.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not the most well-versed in Fates, period, but...
Neither am I.
I could see him being up here. I wouldn't really mind that.
Yeah, and in terms of being not really well-versed, I've never done a run of 3 houses with the Ashen Wolves, like, through a normal playthrough. Like, I did Cindered Shadows, the DLC, and in that Yuri was one of the better units, but because you have a really limited unit pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
No. I was just gonna say, like about Yuri, like, I think, like, for me personally, he's one of the coolest ones, right? And foul play and all that stuff is super, super sick. But is he more iconic than someone like Niles? I don't believe that for a second. Like, I think that, like, even in his own game, he gets overshadowed so much just because he is DLC, which is just kind of awkward. I feel like if he was in the base game of 3 Houses, he'd be maybe more of a fan favorite like some other characters are.
Definitely more. I think by the time Cindered Shadows came out, most people were so burned out of 3 Houses, they just didn't go back.
Oh, yeah, no.
And the people that did go back and play with them are the types of people who obsess over 3 Houses mechanics and thus love Yuri because they love foul play and whatnot. And so it's just interesting.
Yeah. No, I was one of those people. Like, I didn't play Cindered Shadows until, like, what was it, last year or the year before or whatever, because I quit the game and Fire Emblem altogether before that DLC even rolled out. So I don't know. I think he's cool, but if we're going to take someone off out of these 5, I think it does have to be him.
Yeah, my reasoning is a little bit different, but it's more because it's really hard to pin down 3 houses units into a class.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I know that technically he is, thief or trickster or whatever his class is that he brings.
Right.
But how meaningful is his class? Is he as, a class whatnot versus just as the skills he has? And I guess that's the problem with most 3 houses units. Like, there's a reason why, like, Dedue managed to at least be in consideration. I forget if we left him on for armor. Because he's built to be an armor in the early game, in which that actually matters, before you can build up crazy skill builds, at least outside of New Game Plus.
Funny thing is, I think we forgot to talk about Dedue in the last one.
We might have. I don't know. Maybe I just accepted him. I forget. We were running low on time, and everything was happening. It was a long video already.
Yeah, no, it happens. The Dedue fans
Either way,
are mad.
I'm still happy with these thieves, though.
Yeah,
if you are.
I'm cool. I'm cool with that. I don't think Jafar necessarily belongs up here or anything like that, necessarily. So.
Yeah, Assassin has a very kind of different feel. Like, once you get Jafar, it's like, okay, first of all, he can't steal.
Yeah.
Second of all, even if he could, there's nothing more to steal. The last stealable is in Hector's trial map. And then 3, you just kind of use him as a delete button and hope he doesn't get berserked in Fog.
Yeah, he's definitely a weird case, but I know he's a fan favorite, but maybe not for these kinds of reasons that are up here already.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, let's go down to Troubadours, Heels on Wheels, and this is, again, another one that's like a little bit hard to talk about, but Ethlin, first Troubadour playable, really solid example. Nana, probably in most cases just better Ethlin.
In some ways, yeah.
In some ways, it's a little bit different, obviously.
Yeah.
Clarine, I think Clarine is very similar to Priscilla, who's kind of the other one that is in consideration here.
Sure.
But I would say Clarine is probably more important, mostly because she's in a game where healing matters more.
Okay.
Or at least staff utility matters more in FE6 than FE7. FE7 is like, do you have warp access and high magic to use warp? I don't know. So it's like, they fill a very, obviously they're the same unit type, they fill a very similar role in your army. And I don't think that's a problem, but I think that because of that, kind of only one should be up here. They're not super notably different in my mind.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The cool thing about people like Clarine and Nana, especially, besides like the normal like basic staff stuff, is like the support utility. Whether it's Clarine with Rutger or Deke, or Nana with just Charm in general, just Charm, is just crazy. So that's like another point in their favors where like I haven't heard about anything crazy with Priscilla's supports or being a support unit in that way so much.
Yeah, supports are less meaningful across the board in FE7 compared to FE6, even though they're a lot easier to get. One of her best supports in my mind is with Raven, but Raven doesn't really need that support too much. I think she offers a little bit of defense, but yeah, it's not notable enough for me to like be constantly working towards it consciously. It's just kind of like, it'll happen.
Yeah,
I might pair him up, I might not, but
okay.
And then Mist is really interesting because, like, basically, she's the perfect unit to early promote with a Master Seal in a game that really, overall, doesn't want you doing that.
Yeah, no, the leveling up naturally in FE9 is usually pretty easy to do, and promoting that way, so...
Especially with bonus experience. And as FE9 was my first game, it definitely put me into the habit of not early promoting, but Mist is one of the few units that I would definitely say isn't necessarily even just an exception, but like almost should be the rule. If you're using her, you early promote her with a Master Seal, because it's just that, like, what does she get out of her level ups? A couple points in stats that don't really make that much of a difference to her job. What does she get from promoting? 2 or 3, maybe it's 3 move and a horse with Super Kanto.
I think it's 3.
Because I think she goes from 5 to 8, right?
I think that's right, actually, yeah. I think it is 5 to 8.
Yeah, because she's 1 move behind your paladins still, but that doesn't necessarily make too much of a difference because she's faster than everyone else, but also Kanto is the important part. Kanto and thus rescue utility from the mount.
Yeah.
It's one of the best, most notable improvements. I think the only other one that could even be mentioned in a similar way is Lachesis from Cleric to Master Knight.
Yeah. Now, Lachesis is a weird one to talk about. I thought about including her too, but it's like, is that even really like heels on wheels, or is that just like mid-okay sword fighter staffer to the best class ever made?
Assuming you can get her there, because it's so hard to level her up to 20. She can't arena very well, and yeah, you can staff abuse, but you know, how much money are you really siphoning into her just to get her to Master Knight?
Yeah, no, it's not a very smooth experience, I will say. It's fun when you get there.
Yeah, definitely a fun unit if you get there. You said when you get there. I say if, because I think unless you're deliberately going for it, you're not going to accidentally or incidentally get Master Knight Lachesis. It's just kind of too far out of reach, in my mind at least, in my experience. But I'm trying to think of any other troubadours, and it's like, okay, do we talk about Lara Shell? Absolutely love her character. I think she's just, the way I put it is, she's like a D&D character self-insert in a Fire Emblem game. Her whole squad is. It's like you have the super loyal berserker. You have her, who's very like, kind of like checks the box classic, noble background, tragic story, becomes a healer, you know, all this type of stuff. Like I said, perfect like D&D character. And then Renak, who's just the rogue who got caught up in all this and doesn't really want to be, but still sticks around anyway.
Yeah.
It's the D&D trio. I love them so much, but I think in terms of gameplay-wise, because they show up so late, relatively speaking, like halfway through the game isn't super late, but like for a level, what is it, like 5 Troubadour, I want to say? No, level 3, whatever level she is.
I think 3 is correct. I could be wrong. I think 3 is right.
Yeah, it's like level 3, and so she takes a long time just to level up to 10. And that's assuming you're promoting at 10, because staves do not give a lot of experience in GBA Fire Emblem.
No. That is rough. That is rough.
And yeah, and I'm trying to think of any other troubadours that are worth mentioning. Like, Elise, I think, is the most notable one outside of that, because
freeze staff
Maribel is a healer in a game that, like, you really don't want to spend your time healing in.
Oh yeah, there she is.
And it's like, do we count? What the heck is her name? From Engage, the annoying sister.
Oh, Hortensia.
Hortensia.
That's an odd one.
It's been so long, I can't even remember the names. Like, do we even count her as heals on wheels? Because that's kind of her whole shtick. Is she's heals and is on a flying horse?
Yeah. That's a weird one, because like I do see what you're saying, but it almost more so makes me think of, like, since it is still a Pegasus, it almost makes
Valencia?
Well, yeah, it makes me think more in like the Alencia or like the Fee sort of area. Like that kind of thing.
Falcon Knights that heal.
Yeah. So it's kind of weird, but I get what you're saying. I get where you're going.
Like, Hortensia is most notable because of her staff utility. That's like her whole shtick of her personal skill and her class special and all that type of stuff. She's one of the few units that can be argued to have something she brings to the table that's actually unique in Engage, with big personality. But do we think it's like super notable enough for the series as a whole? I don't necessarily think so.
I don't think so
I think
either.
Maribel is... Maribel just feels exceedingly generic to me. And I don't know if that's just me.
I forget
having
she
only played
exists.
Awakening 2 to 3 times. Her whole point feels like to be a damsel in distress for Rickon's character arc.
Yeah, no, I remember most Awakening characters, even though I haven't played it in years. She's one of the ones that I consistently forget exists. Like, I almost don't even get the point. Which is, like, kind of sad, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And so I don't necessarily think she's super important. I don't think Lara Shell, much as I love her as a character, is notable enough. And I think drop Priscilla as well, because, again, it's just Clarine, but doesn't do as much.
Yeah.
So then the question is, do we leave Elise up here? Because
I think you could.
But in a game that the healing actually kind of matters, and not just healing, but staff utility, freeze and rescue. Like, I'm sure you've already, in the little bits of Lunatic Conquest you've played, found some places where like freeze or rescue are like super valuable.
Oh, absolutely. Like, freeze, just having freeze that early seems like it's OP. It's like, do I really need this right now? But pretty early on, you're like, yeah, I kind of need this right now, don't I? Yeah. And I appreciate that so much. So I could put her up here over Mist. I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, I think we have there's a tough argument against Elise in that you have the butler, which either Felicia or Jacob, who are can do the staff thing, but Elise, that's her whole class. She has an absurd magic growth if you wanted to early promote her into something that can use magic. I know that there are some people like Danny who highly recommend putting her, I don't know if highly recommend, but who have mentioned putting her into Wyvern just because that's she's one of the few units that can do it without having to have an A support.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because her innate backup class is Wyvern, and so you put her to Wyvern just to have an extra flyer, and then you bump her to Malignite to have like an actual like flying magic attacker, because Camilla doesn't really have enough magic to be a backbone for that.
Oh.
So there's a bunch of stuff that you can do with Elise, more so than just her staff utility, but I think that staff utility is still important in a game like Conquest, where especially those utility staves are really important kind of all throughout, not just like at specific for like skipping chapters or whatnot.
Yeah, no, I'm convinced. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I think Elise definitely belongs on here. It's really sad to see Mist go, because I think Mist is a really cool unit, but ultimately Path of Radiance is not a game that needs as much healing. The most important thing Mist does is help Ike win the Black Knight fight, which you can just run away from anyway and have no downside to.
Yeah, you can. The one thing I'll give to Mist in Path of Radiance, at the very least over Radiant Dawn, is that like staves, as far as like not utility wise, just like pure healing staves in FE9 I think are just more valuable than an FE10, which might sound backwards because like the enemies are weaker in FE9 than in FE10, so you'd think you'd need more in FE10, and you do need more healing in FE10. But in FE9 you have like 2 or 3 elixirs until like the final chapter where you can buy as many as you want for the whole game. And besides that, you have 10 HP vulns.
Yeah. And
when you have these powerhouse units that have like 40, 50 plus HP, and they're enemy facing all these things, and they maybe get to half health on like a bad, unlucky turn or whatever, you're gonna want a staff.
Stand on a heal hedge, bro.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like the 10 use vuln is not doing all that much sometimes. Whereas Radiant Dawn is like, yeah, we have vulns, but they do 20 healing now. And we have concoctions and elixirs all over the place. You know what I mean? So it's like the power of healing items are so much crazier in FE10 when you have these like 1 to 2 range enemy facing powerhouse units that can just, chug a concoction and stand there. So
definitely. And I think in FE9, another thing that is important to note about it is that it's not necessarily that the enemies are strictly weaker, it's that the enemies prioritize bulk is the way that it is that because they're not really dealing a ton of damage to you, but they are still chipping you down, while you're not really ever able to one-shot enemies without lucky crits. You are generally going to be trading blows, and most units, their bulk, while sufficient to survive, isn't sufficient enough to like not take damage.
Yeah.
And while you have a lot of, really good ways of boosting evasion, especially with like Oscar with earth supports and whatnot, I think that having some healing is definitely important for maps, especially like Clash, and having healing that can keep up with the bulk of your mounted army is very important as well. So like I said, it still hurts me a lot to not put Mist up here, but at the same time, it is like, how can you really argue against any of the four that are up here, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly close competition here. One last little thing about FE9 I'll mention is the farther you go into the game, the more like Feral 1 Lagoos you see, and they will have the highest hit rates on the map, generally speaking, and they also hit hard. So sometimes a 10 HP Vuln is like not going to cut it for like consistency.
Everyone memes on the cat until it's hitting you for 16 twice.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. It's like, whoa, okay.
And actually hitting because there's no way to really dodge them reliably because they're pulling 80s when everyone else with their steel weapons are pulling 50s.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, credit to Mist and all that, but I think we can move on with these four.
Credit. But speaking of, moving down the list, non-Christmas calves.
Yeah, it's a weird category, but I think it's kind of fun.
Not the red and green boys. I think that there are two right away that people are going to throw out that I'm going to throw out here.
Okay.
One is Lowen from FE7, and one is Harden from FE1, FE11.
Yeah, I knew Harden was going to come up here. I got a comment on the last video. I didn't talk about him because he's not a personal favorite. I'm not like the most experienced Shadow Dragon player. I do think he's a cool character though, so I'm down to talk about his gameplay.
So, Harden, before we get into like the other people that are up here, Harden kind of represents the best aspects of both Kayn and Abel, put into a unit that just happens to join a couple chapters later at a slightly higher level than they are. He has, in Shadow Dragon, not like super high weapon ranks, but in FE1 and FE3, his weapon level is sufficient to wield the silver sword that gets given to Marth and told, hey, give this to Harden.
Yeah.
In Shadow Dragon, the funniest thing is, you get a silver sword, and he has like either C or D rank swords and can't use it. Because silver is, I think, A rank.
Is it A?
B?
I thought it was B.
It's A or B, I forget exactly.
In New Mystery, it's B. I know that.
Okay, so it probably, I think DS Emblem was when they switched Silver and Brave, because it used to be Brave was B and Silver was A.
Right, okay.
In GBA. So yeah, no, that's where they switched it then. Yeah. So he has like C rank swords and B rank lances, I want to say, and then you get a silver sword for him. Or he was like double C rank, I forget. But either way, his growths are pretty solid, his bases are quite good. He's bulky, but also pretty fast, and also decently strong. He just kind of is like the perfect mid-rounder of your army.
Yeah.
And he's one of the units that it does, like, you do need to invest in him to train him up. He doesn't come out of the gate, like, super strong. But he's still able to hold his own even on, like, hard 5 enemies. As much as anyone who's not Sedgar or Wolf who are trained can, Yeah,
yeah.
And definitely kind of has a tendency to be one of your stronger units in your army as a whole in FE11.
Okay. Hey, you convinced me.
Yeah. And then as for Lowen, in a lot of ways he's kind of just like yet another Cavalier. But he's your Cavalier for chapters where Kent and Sane aren't around, and if you didn't play Lin mode, Kent and Sane are pretty garbage.
Yeah.
Like they're not garbage. Like they come back into swing without a lot of effort. Sane a little bit faster because he has strength and speed, whereas Kent has like defense and skill, I think, over Sane.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing was like Kent has like overkill speed, whereas Sane has enough speed with more strength. Is that the normal thing?
I think their bases are like that, but
okay.
In terms of growths, if I remember right, or maybe this was just the luck that I got in my zero bases playthrough, Sane is just like all strength and speed.
Oh, okay.
And Kent was actually more, defense oriented.
Interesting.
But like I said, that could just be selection bias, experience bias. So not 100% sure. But
okay.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about Lowen.
Yeah, we are talking about Lowen.
Once again, he's like, the Christmas Cavs tend to be, hey, here's a little bit of a dynamic of different growths, different strengths, designed to show, hey, units of similar classes can be different. And the non-Christmas Cavaliers tend to feel like a little bit more generic because they are often like kind of mid-ground between them.
Yeah, they tend to stand out less in most games, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, so Lowen doesn't really stand out too much, but he is just kind of... It's that perfect example. It's kind of like the Franz effect. He's always there. He's always solid if you want to use him. It's just kind of like, do you really remember him? And it's like, Franz, I think, is more memorable because he has that whole, like, recruit aura, fresh-faced and whatnot, of just, like, of his character and personality.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Lowen, less so, a little bit. You never even see his eyes. He's just kind of, in my mind, more forgettable outside of his golden armor.
Yeah, and he's one of the more average Joes of Fire Emblem, I would say. Him and like Aran from FE10 or whatever, like those kind of characters that just kind of, they punch in, they punch out. That's basically it.
I don't distinctly remember any support of Lowen's, so I don't actually know what his character is like at all.
Me either.
Tell us down in the comments your favorite Lowen moment.
Yeah, your favorite Lowen line. I'm sure he's got some great one-liners.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like the type of person who have like a Saizo Baruka support. ...
Oh no, no, not again.
Okay. Anyway, as far as branching out though, I guess is the question of what we qualify as a Cavalier, because it's like, okay, Fergus and Finn, great units, fantastic, are on a horse for a decent amount of that game because you can't bring your horses inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ares, everyone keeps trying to tell me that Ares has problems, and I know he has problems, but the problems that he had for me are different than the problems they say he has. The problems that he had for me was that he just got shot 8 times and 3 of them crit, and then he finally died in the very last chapter in one round of combat because the Deadlord sniper has the Jamka machine gun build.
Yeah,
with a killer bow. That was Ares' only real problem. Other than that, he just is like super solid, has Mistletoe. Yeah, he doesn't always kill if he doesn't crit, but who cares? He's bulky and strong and kind of everything you want in a decent mid-ranger. I guess that's the thing. All these Cavaliers are like, for the most part, just decent, solid mid-rangers. It's like if you're playing a card game, you're playing a deck, and it's not your boss monster, it's not, your ace, it's not your win condition, but it's just kind of the solid one that you always draw that just kind of sees a lot of play on the field and does a decent amount of work.
Yeah, they're like your staple cards.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I get that. That's kind of cool.
That's the way that I kind of see these Cavaliers as.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, like, using a lot of these guys is just, like, to some degree, never wrong, I guess. Like, I've heard people talk down on Ares, but, like, Ares has, like, pretty solid bases. He has a legendary weapon right off rip, and that legendary weapon already gives him, like, a res boost that prevents him from getting slept and, like, statused already. So it's like, there's already these things at the beginning that are put in place to make him like succeed in like basic ways. So I feel like it's never like a nuisance. You know what I mean? Like to use him.
And plus with FE4, the way that it's designed, Ares is one of the units that gets given to you regardless of what your pairings are.
Yeah.
He's preset, and I have a lot of respect for the preset units because they just do their job and usually do it pretty well. The last 2 chapters, at the very least the first couple turns for me, always end up being the Ares and Seliph show.
Yeah.
Because no one else can step outside because they just get put to sleep.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, that's such a big deal. Like, I really appreciated that on my first run of FE4, because I had, like, almost no pairings. So I was like, well, thank God Seliph, Leaf, and Ares are all crazy. Like, yeah, I can finish the game, you know? That's so nice. That's so nice of them.
Yeah, it's a return to... In some ways, it's kind of a return to form in a story way of, like, what they try to set up as the backstory of Sigurd, Quan, and Eldigan. Of, like, yeah, you have these 3 units that, once they get rolling, at least in the case of Leaf, are really good.
Yeah.
And just kind of own the field together, and it's really fun. But yeah, Ares, I think, definitely deserves to stay. And it's like, I love Finn so much. I love Fergus quite a bit. Are they really iconic, like, Cavaliers, though, in terms of what they do? Maybe.
I mean...
Fergus is almost more of a sword master in my mind, who just happens to own a horse.
That's actually kind of fair. Like, the FCM5 will do that to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know me, I gotta defend Finn's honor at the very least.
Oh yeah, no, he definitely deserves it, and I think in terms of the role he plays in FE4 and especially in FE5, he plays very important roles. FE5, he's one of the only units that can reliably capture, and even when he's not capturing, he's just, again, it kind of Finn's old reliable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's that same sort of thing. He's never the most impressive unit on your team, but he just always gets the job done.
Yeah, I would say he's consistently like in the bottom of the the top 5 range usually. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, he's behind Safi and Asbel and all that sort of stuff, but like you need high movement, you need someone to just blow up enemies. Finn's your guy, you know. No one does it like he does it when he has the Brave Lance out and stuff. So I love Finn. But the Fergus comment is actually really funny. I never put that together. Like a sword master,
that owns a horse.
Yeah, just got a horse one day. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I can use this. That's really funny to me.
Feels like, doesn't it? Because his class, you know, sword knight or forest knight, whatever it is.
Yeah. I forget the exact name.
Yeah, it being sword locked is not a death sentence in FE5 by any means.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he's still one of the better units you have, but he has such a weird, interesting play style to him with that super high FCC. He's gonna take some hits, but he's gonna end up critting and killing anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it just doesn't really give me that same cavalier energy as these others.
That's fair. I mean, if we're gonna take down one of the Thracia guys, I would take down Fergus.
Mm-hmm.
If we're trying to keep it in the sort of like all reliable, like never wrong to use staple card Cav kind of way. I think Fergus is maybe a little too flashy for that sometimes, in a weird way.
Yeah, and I think in a similar way, then it's like, okay, these are our old reliables, I guess, and so I guess it's either Franz or Lowen who gets out of here, but maybe let's just take Lowen down because neither of us can remember anything about him.
Hey, I like Franz. I'm cool with him staying up, you know?
Yeah, Franz is one of those units that's like, yeah, he comes in, he's not super strong, but the enemies aren't super tough, and then you level him up a little bit, and then he gets stronger, and you usually get stronger faster than the enemies do, and then you're just kind of like, yeah, he's always just pretty good so long as you keep using him.
Yeah. No, the funny thing about Franz is, like, my first 2 runs of FE8, my Franz was different than how a lot of people described him. Like, a lot of people described him as, like, oh, he just has, like, good strength and speed, and he just becomes, like, a budget Seth. Like, he's just, like, really good when you get him going. and he was really good in my first like runs of FE8, way back whenever.
Sure.
But the thing with Franz that was funny to me was his strength was like actually not great in those first 2 runs that I did, doing like both route splits and stuff. A lot of times in like the mid game he wouldn't actually one round, but he was the most defense blessed unit I'd ever seen. So he just took no damage anyway. I was like, what is this? Like,
sounds about right.
Like he's just, I don't know, he's fun. I like him a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing about growth units, especially growth units with pretty decent across the board growths, is that you never actually know how they're going to turn out on any given run.
Mm-hmm.
We always talk about these units as if they have average growths, but unless you're playing Engage or Fixed Growth Mode FE9, they don't actually have fixed growths.
Yeah.
And so, as always, your experience will vary. And so, units with pretty decent across-the-board growth, like Franz, like a lot of these, non-Christmas calves, I think are really fun to use just because, it's the whole life is like a box of chocolates type of thing. Life is like a unit with 50% in all their growth. You never know what you're gonna get, but you're gonna get something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Franz in this category, like compared to these other 3, is the most volatile, if that makes sense. Whereas like Finn has okay growths for Thracia, but his bases are so solid and his personal weapon is so good that they don't really matter all that much. As long as you promote him, like he consistently hits, the thresholds for like capturing Salem on chapter 12 and things like that with Leaf support. In Ares, we kind of touched on a similar thing. It's like the Mistletoe and the res boost and his base stats just kind of carry him for the rest of the game, like kind of thing. But with that being said, I still think Franz deserves to be up here as like the not red-green cav, or dark green cav, I should say. He is green.
Yeah.
But is there anyone else you want to mention for this, just quickly, or are you happy here?
I'm pretty happy here. We could talk about Silas if you want to, but
nah.
it's just kind of more of the same. It's that low-end effect. He's like he's the staple. He does the job he needs to and doesn't really do it in a super flashy or noticeable way.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything flashy or notable about Silas.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's a good enough unit who happens to be pretty easily accessible in all 3 routes. I think he's one of the weird units that actually joins a lot later in Revelations than either of the other routes.
Oh, okay.
If I remember right, because you get him pretty early on in Birthright. And Conquest, he's right there with you, but Revelations, he's like a boss in their version of like the Conquest Chapter 10 map, but I think that's like Chapter 12 or something.
Okay.
I forget exactly the order you do things in Rev.
Yeah.
Because who remembers that?
I only played that game once, and I hope to never play it again, so...
Fair enough. I played it through once, tried to play it again on Lunatic, and then just got bored and quit.
Yeah, no, it's not for me.
Yeah.
But that being said, if we were gonna put someone else up here, I'd put Lowen up here before I would put Silas up there. Just me personally.
Fair.
But yeah,
Fair.
I'm cool with these 4. I'm actually happy with this. I'm glad Finn's there.
Yeah. And now let's get to Mercs and Heroes, because, oh boy, there's a lot of them, and kind of like the non-Christmas calves, a lot of them are really solid staples. Some of them, though, have a lot more notoriety than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we talked about Deke early on, you mentioned him, I think he kind of fits that bill, too, of like, yeah, a lot of people will give the hero crest to Rutger, and then they'll give their second hero crest to, like, Gonzalez, or maybe Führer, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Deke gets overlooked, often just because of a lack of promotion items. I think that if Heavy 6 was a game with Master Seals instead of dedicated promotion items, or if you just got, like, another early hero crest, I think Deke would be way higher on a lot of people's list, because he's just solid throughout the whole game. rarely going to be your best unit, but he's pretty much never going to be your worst so long as he's, being fed and keeping up.
Yeah. No, I feel like, in a weird way, the game almost wants you to give that first hero crest to Deke. But, like, logistically, you should give it to Rutger first.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just how it is in practice. But, like, it's weird that the game makes me feel that way. Like, it feels like it wants you to give it to Deke. And I think if you do, he's super, super fun and super, super solid. I'm surprised how much fun I've been having using him in this last playthrough. I finally made the effort to not use Rutger. And I've been pleasantly
surprised.
Surprised.
Yourself away from the bottle there.
Yeah, no, I did. I was like, all right, I can't do it. I had to do the same with Lou as well. We're using Lilina instead. And I have some thoughts about that. My Lilina is speed blessed a little bit, which does help.
Good.
That does help.
That helps a lot.
But, Lou's my boy, I love him.
Yeah.
I miss him a little bit.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking mercenaries. We've got to mention Ogma, who in the early games definitely has that sort of effect, similar to Deke, where he's just solid and pretty good across the board. And the game, it feels like you naturally want to promote him as soon as you get that first, hero crest. Because your choice is between Ogma and Navarre for that. And I guess technically Rad or Caesar, but...
Yikes.
People only raise them for memes, kind of like people only raise Mathis for memes.
Yeah.
I was tempted to mention in the Cavaliers, Mathis and Violent and all the scrub cav squad.
Oh, no. Don't tell 5 points.
Yeah, no. I say scrub cav squad. They can be made good, just like anyone can be made good, but let's be real, Mathis moments are Mathis memes for a reason.
Oh, Mathis.
But anyway, so Ogma is generally pretty solid, but his performance does vary across the 4 different games that he's in, I want to say. And so it's like, I think his best performance is probably in either FE12 or FE3 Book 2, the new mystery side of things.
Okay.
His Shadow Dragon side is pretty good, though he tends to get overshadowed by Barst in that, especially in FE11 where you can reclass, and Barst just notably has better bases and better growths.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
In any class you put the 2 in. But in FE3, because he comes out, you get him Chapter 3, I want to say, with along with Sirius and the Yumina and Yubello.
Yeah.
And he's kind of designed to be able to hold his own in that chapter, and does, except for unless you're playing on Lunatic or Lunatic Reverse New Mystery, in which he
it's a little
dies
harder.
turn 1. Because no one can fight 2 enemies aside from Chris.
Yeah, pretty much. But
and maybe Pala.
Yeah.
Pretty solid overall there, and he's the mercenary that all other mercenaries are built off of. He's the archetype holder, and for good reason in my mind. Again, he's not the most flashy unit, but he's never really bad, even in his arguably worst showing of Shadow Dragon FE11. He's still perfectly serviceable, perfectly solid. If you train him up, he's gonna be, solid strength, speed, and defense, so what are you gonna complain about type thing?
Yeah.
Is that he's not overkill. Maybe if you're in the hardest difficulties, he starts falling off, but that's just kind of the mercenary life.
Yeah. No, I mean, I could see him being up here for a multitude of reasons. Because, I mean, he's... Like, the person I directly compare him to is, like, Navarre. And in my mind, it's like, who cares about Navarre? But, like, at least Ogma, I could give him credit for, like, doing specific things. You know what I mean? Like, reliably or, being helpful in general, so...
Yeah, especially because he's present in Chapter 2, and at the very least, you can give him credit for Hard 5, the wielding the Killing Edge, being able to not get doubled by...
Is it Chapter 3? Yeah, Chapter 3 boss, yeah. Yeah, so there's stuff that you can still give him credit for, even in his lesser showing games. Really solid all around. Ralph... We love Ralph. We love Ralph over here. I love Ralph.
Like, there's sleep sword beams for recruiting Xander, but Xavier.
Xavier, yeah.
Name starts with an X. Same enough. Whatever. There's sleep sword memes for recruiting Xavier, but he always is just like, it's that perfect filler that he has. Of like his stats aren't great, but they're good enough, and he requires no effort to be put into him, and just kind of walks out the door and is great.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's not even like a thing where it's like, oh yeah, his bases are solid, but maybe he won't one round. It's like, no, he'll one round. He'll do what you want him to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
he'll do what you need him to.
Yeah.
He might not do everything you want him to, but he'll do what you need him to.
Yeah.
I weirdly enough, I debate Harken on here because I almost think he's too good, but also too not showing up. Like, I think that his availability is kind of, in my mind, mercenaries and heroes are those units that just kind of get in there. They're there with you when you need them for most of the way, and just kind of exist to go through. And if you use them and train them up, they get good,
right,
and are never really bad. And while Harken technically does that, he comes in late in the game, is a star of the show, has some of the most absurd bases relative to strength of enemies in any Fire Emblem game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you want to talk about if we have a Kagetsu in old Fire Emblem. That's kind of what Harken feels like, except Harken joins 10 chapters later.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know how I feel about him, you know?
No, that kind of makes sense. Which
is
is
like if Astrum was good.
If Astrum was good. No,
that's Harken.
That's interesting. The way you sort of look at that, because initially in my mind it's like, oh, of course Harken's on here. Have you seen that guy? Mm-hmm. But I do kind of get what you're saying. I don't know the numbers. I always get the chapter numbers mixed up really badly in FE7. So if you just play like Hector mode, right? What chapter does he join on? If like,
I think it's 24. Pale Flower of Darkness, I think, is 24. Let me quick wiki this because I have the wiki open because I was writing some trivia for my channel.
Okay.
Hector. No, that's way later. Okay.
Oh,
Hector,
okay.
In Hector mode, it's chapter 27.
Okay, and Hector mode begins on what, 11 technically?
Yeah, begins on 11 and ends on 32, 31. One sec. Well, let me figure this out.
Yeah. Because this is important, I think.
Yeah, Elut mode and Hector mode start at chapter 11. Hector mode goes to... So, Victor or Death is 32. So you have 32X, which is just the map, which in hard mode is only Berserkers. And then you have the final. So...
Okay.
33 would be the final if it was called a chapter number.
Okay.
So you have him for 9 chapters, but 3 of those are Gaidens.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's Night of Farewells, the Water Temple, Battle Preparations, which doesn't really count as a chapter, and Value of Life, which is, again, the just all Berserkers.
Yeah, that's a weird map. Yeah, okay, because I think that's notable because the way I was thinking is like, okay, he's available for 9 chapters. Ralph joins in chapter 15. The final chapter of Thracia is 25. But most...
Okay, so he's there for like 10. But,
yeah,
but
so
also...
it's like... It's similar.
Gaidens.
Yeah, it's similar, right, at face value, but like, you have to think about how most people actually play. Whereas, like, they will do most of those Thracia Gaidens, except for maybe 24X. A lot of people don't like that. I love that map, but I'm not in the majority there. And then, like, some of those Gaidens in FE7, like, who even really cares, I guess. So it does hurt him maybe a little bit. But as far as, like, general availability, they're kind of close, I think.
Yeah, relative to the game, percentage-wise, Harken is definitely a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
I think, that said, for the maps that he joins in, are, like, the few maps that good combat is really appreciated in. It's Battle Before Dawn, Night of Farewells, the Water Temple, Cog of Destiny, Sands of Time, the defend map message from Nurgle, and Victory or Death, which is basically Cog of Destiny Part 2.
Yeah.
And then the final.
Okay.
Which is the boss rush. So all maps that I will say that I will give him credit for that. Those are a lot of maps where good combat does start to actually differentiate you from the rest of the pack, because not many people are one-rounding Valkyries. Not many people are taking on, like 20 enemies at once. Like, maybe more units are than I give him credit for, but the fact that he does it out of the box with no investment means he's your insurance against bad growths and or deaths.
Yeah, no, okay. Alright, so what do we do about Raven then? With all that being said...
So Raven is an interesting one, because as far as Mercenary goes, he's weird. Because he is super strong, super fast, has a lot of hit points, but not a lot of defense.
Yeah, he's not as, like, well-rounded, bulky mercenary that you would expect.
He hits hard, he hits fast, he kills a lot of things, he dodges a decent number of attacks, but if he gets unlucky and gets hit a couple times, then he can fall.
Yeah. No,
and so it's the reverse problem almost that you have with a unit like Deke or Ralph.
Yeah. I seem to recall Raven having, like, low luck as well. I don't know if that really matters.
Yeah, his luck is low enough that certain enemies actually do have a little bit of crit on him. Like, enemies don't generally have a ton of luck in... Enemies don't have luck in FE7, and they don't have, like, a ton of crits. But if they have a crit weapon like an FE7 Luna or a Killing Edge, then that can be... That's bad for everyone. So it's enemies in FE7 either have a couple points of crit, which will make a difference for Raven, or they have a ton of crit, which, low luck doesn't really matter. Luck doesn't matter unless it's absurdly high.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that because that's something I remember from the last time I played FE7 was like, I would have these like little jump scare moments of like, wait, this guy has crit, like out of nowhere. And that's just like a little thing that, like, when you notice it, you really notice it. You're like, oh, geez, like, I don't feel safe all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Raven is definitely a unit that it's like, he's fun to use, almost because you don't necessarily feel safe using him. Because he's the most liable to suffer from success.
Yeah.
In the cast, pretty much.
Yeah, I could see that.
That said, I think he is another kind of interesting dynamic of that mercenary group, and I think that just because he doesn't really fit that mold isn't necessarily a bad thing for him.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's hard to say, because I also wanted to talk about one of the, in my mind, more notable for different reasons, heroes in Echidna.
Oh, okay.
Because... Okay, outside of Arcanea Saga, Echidna is the only female mercenary or hero up until Awakening.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
The only one. Like, Malice is a mercenary in BSFE, Arcanea Saga.
Yeah,
but she was changed to be a Myrmidon in FE12.
Oh.
And Athena is a Myrmidon. The mercenary class actually isn't available on the female set in DS Fire Emblem. So... And then, the other ones are like, Mia is a Myrmidon. She's the only female mercenary or hero in Fire Emblem before Awakening.
That's kind of cool.
Awakening, then you get, Severa, Flavia, a couple.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more equal with its distribution of classes.
Okay.
At least as far as mercenary goes. And that continues for the most part.
Yeah. The worst thing about Echidna is that when she spawns in, she is equipping a steel axe. And that's just bad
and
because
immediately has to fight like
it's
four
like
cavaliers, I want to say.
no, it's like 3
Bandits?
or 4 like I can't think of the word. They're axe
like
units.
axe fighters?
They're axe units, yeah. I can't remember if
3 or
they're
4 fighters.
I can't
And then if you don't rescue her, then she fights the cavalier squad.
yeah.
Forces.
I can't remember if they're fighters or like Gonzalez, like brigands or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, it's one of the two.
But like
they kind of pepper them intermittently.
Yeah, like all 3 of them attack her because they're ambush spawns. Like before you can even react, and they all have about 50 hit. And I think if she gets hit by 2 of them, she dies. Or maybe it's like she has to dodge more than 1. I forget exactly what. And it's like a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But with that being said, the best part about Echidna and recruiting Echidna is you get to play the single best chapter in FE6. That map is a masterpiece. I love that so much.
That map is definitely more fun than the Bartray version, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Definitely.
I love you, Bartray, but your map is not fun.
No, that map is a snooze. The one before that is like kind of a similar kind of map. There's a lot of villages and like over walls and stuff like that, but no.
Yeah, Echidna's map set, I think those 2 maps are definitely harder, but I think that in some ways because they're harder, they're more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Use your brain more.
11A in Binding Blade is I love that map so much.
Anyway, so it's like, here's the thing. The problem with Mercenaries and Heroes is that they are all just like notable enough and important enough to your army that you're pretty much always fielding at least one of them for at least a couple chapters.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard, but they're not always the best units in your army, and so it's really hard to kind of pick out which ones are the best or which ones are, your favorites or anything. And so how do we narrow this down,
Yeah. This is hard. I think we can safely put Ogma up here. This is going to sound weird because I just put him up here, but I do think Deke being solid, even if you don't promote him for those early chapters, is already good. But then if you do promote him, it's just like even better from there. I love Ralph and I really want to include him, but maybe I shouldn't. That one's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's the thing of like Ralph he's the epitome of like the what's the, like, my brain almost want to say forgotten but never forgotten type thing, but that doesn't work. It's like fallen but never forgotten type thing. It's like he's never the star of the show. He was never designed to be the star of the show, but he does super forgotten, underrated, but still very valuable.
Yeah, okay. And then, like, I think it's hard to take off, like, Raven for me.
Yeah.
Even though he is kind of the weirdest one here.
I mean, it was hard for me to see Garrick get taken off the list, even though it's like I kind of agree that he's just like another example of a good mercenary.
Yeah, okay. So he's just kind of like another like Ogma or
yeah, it's like he's
thing.
Another like
actually
like he joins later, and so he's more similar to like a Ralph in a weird way, a Ralph or Echidna, or like Harken kind of.
Yeah,
it's so hard to describe.
Yeah, I think part of that is because he joins with the hero crest, so it's like, hey, you want to use this on him? The game's like trying to tell you that.
Yeah, you get the option to immediately have a hero or a ranger if you want to be like that.
Yeah.
Or to build him up and make him like an even more insane like growth unit. So you get a choice between a Raven or a Ralph.
Yeah. Oh man, dude, this is hard.
Isn't it though? It's just
I didn't think it would be this hard.
Yeah. This is gonna be the weirdest Mount Rushmore here. And then Echidna is just kind of, it's not just notoriety of like that uniqueness, but I think that uniqueness should count for something if we're doing like a Mount Rushmore style thing.
Yeah, no, I'm down for that. That all matters.
I think she's still, again, kind of Ralph-like.
Yeah.
I guess here's the thing: we keep using the term Ralph like as like the mid-game hero who does his job. So I guess by that definition, maybe Ralph is the new archetype for hero.
The Ralph. Yeah, I'll just change this real fast. The Ralphs.
Yeah, basically, it's the Ogmas and Ralphs of the world. I want to do a video series, and maybe just I'll make it shorts, where I just call all these archetypes by names that no one's agreed upon. Like, it's not the Jagan archetype or the Oifi archetype. It's like the Gunter archetype. And
Oh
it's like,
no!
how many people can I make feel really uncomfortable and angry at me? The Ralph archetype is definitely going to be one of them.
Oh heck yeah! I'm so there for that.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Okay. All right. So these two stay.
We have to wrap up something.
Yeah,
here.
we have to wrap up
So
something.
I guess it's like, do we go for the more kind of unique aspects and put in Echidna and Raven? Or do we go for more of like the old reliable and put in Deke and Harken? You know? Because I think there's a merit to both routes. Is like, do we build up like this is what the mercenary hero archetypes are? Or do we say all of these are what the mercenary and hero archetypes can be?
I think this is. It's so weird to leave any of them off, but
It really is.
I think that I could see a final category being Ogma, Ralph, Raven, Echidna. Because you
Like,
have.
I want to just split the category, put mercenary, and then put hero, and then just include all of them, you know?
Yeah, but then we don't have 4 for each one. Oh no.
Oh.
Because then it's like we have open spaces, right? If we're doing 4 and 4,
Because we have
then where do I
Ogma,
put
Deep,
Garrick?
Raven, and we have Ogma, Deep, Raven, Garrick, and then we have Ralph, Echidna, Harken. Who's a 4th hero?
Who is a 4th hero? That's a good question.
That's a good question. Maybe that's our determining factor. 'Cause
Saber?
None of these.
Saber? Does he count?
He's more mercenary than hero in my mind. I'm thinking like, do we go
oh,
all the way
I
to
see.
like Flavia or something?
Flavia?
I don't know. Like, I don't really. Is there someone in Fates that's a good hero?
A good hero?
Like, is
I don't know about
Laszlo or Selena any good?
I've heard that Selena's not great.
I think they both kind of feel really generic and mid.
Okay.
Would anyone in 3 houses qualify as a hero? None of the units in Engage are heroes by default. Do we just put Kagetsu up there? No, I don't know.
Oh no, Kagetsu. That would be funny. Alright, how about this? How about we put FE10 Ike up there? Sound good?
Whatever ends the video, I need to get you on for raid night.
Okay.
Alrighty, no, this has been great. I've loved just talking about Fire Emblem units in terms of like their role, as opposed to having to say if they're good or bad, you know?
Yeah, no, I find that way more interesting too.
Yeah, it's because you talk about it when we're doing stuff like this and talking about it from their role, we're almost talking about it more from like the designer's side of like, okay, what purpose is this unit supposed to have, regardless of whether they actually do.
Yeah.
And as opposed to just saying, well, this unit kill unit good, so good unit. This unit don't kill unit as good, so bad unit.
Yeah.
Unga bunga, you know?
Unga bunga.
Unga bunga tier list go burr. I say, looking at my YouTube channel and how tier lists built it from the ground. Look, it gets that SEO, bro.
Yeah. All right. Gut instinct. Ogma. Ralph. Raven. Echidna.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
I do like that as, again, the sort of like, it covers the whole breadth of the ideal hero and mercenary archetype.
Yeah.
More so than like centralizing on just the sturdiness aspect.
Yeah, and one thing you said actually kind of stuck with me as we've been talking about this. You said, I think Harken might be too good, which is kind of funny because like I don't know, like all of these are solid, but you're right, they're like never your best unit, generally speaking.
He's too good to be in the same class as Ralph, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he
needs
just
an advanced placement program.
He's too good. He's in another league. This is just the standard boys and girls.
Yeah, these are the people who, you know, took all their regular classes. They didn't go for any college credit, but they're not in any remedial classes.
Yeah.
You know, Raven's fancy. He took, you know, AP Physics or something, but you know, also happens to like, you know, not have. I don't know why that's the one I picked.
That's
you know
what
I mean? It's just like,
that's probably like one of the harder ones too.
Yeah, he's fancy. He took that one, but that's the only AP class he takes. You know, meanwhile, he takes it, but he only gets like a B in it. So
yeah, okay.
I don't know. I'm glad I could make you laugh with that.
Yeah, no, that's funny, and like it just made me think of like because you got me thinking about card games again. I'm on such a Yu-Gi-Oh craze now. It's like these are like your solid staple cards. Everyone loves these cards. Harken is on the ban list. Okay, like that card is too good.
It's like Ralph is Dark Hole, but Harken's Raigeki. Is that how that works? Is Raigeki still banned? I don't know.
Actually,
I don't know Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah. Raigeki and Dark Hole currently are both unlimited. Raigeki used to be banned back when I played like years ago, but they're both they're chilling right now, which is funny.
Yeah. Anyway, before we get off topic on another thing,
I
want to close out the video.
Yeah.
Hope, you know, if anyone stayed tuned and did that joke, what AP class do you think Raven should sign up for?
Oh god, new series? Just kidding. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, Mithril. It's a lot of fun as always.
It's always a pleasure to be on mic with you. We should do this more often, even if it's just like crash a stream or something.
Absolutely. So I was thinking this might be the last one, but I still haven't talked about Christmas calves yet. So I think
Christmas episode?
Yeah, Christmas episode. See you in 5 months. But yeah. I think there is room for one more. But that being said, I don't think every archetype category is necessarily so important that we have to do it. So what I would like from you, the viewer, is if there is a category, an archetype, a class, whatever, that you really want us to talk about, please comment it down below. I'm absolutely going to do Christmas calves. I'm absolutely going to do, like, Goto type characters. But another example is, like, we could talk about shapeshifters, you know, like Fae and Myrrh and the Lagoos and stuff, but I don't know that that's necessarily so important. But if people tell me that they think it's important enough to talk about, I'll do it. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again, Mithril, for being here. Yeah, I guess that's it. Peace out.